This is the Mettle podcast, and I am your host, Coach Thomann. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mettle podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome.
Hallie Mitchell is a softball player, and she's a really good softball player. Good enough in high school to get recruited to go play in the SEC for the University of Kentucky. She's also good enough to get a little bit of playtime in her freshman and sophomore year. And she's also good enough in her junior year to be battling for a starting catching position. That's a win. Those facts, and they are facts, they are a win. And she uses that win and that information to help build confidence. And that might seem simple to somebody on the outside, but when you are Hallie coming from a high school, a smaller high school, Illinois 2A, which means 300 kids or so, going into the University of Kentucky, it was hard to find some wins at first. All of her wins before had been tangible, stat sheet stuff. How many home runs did I have? How many stolen bases? How many hits? How did I do this? And it was easy to build confidence like that. And that's how we do a lot of times with athletics. We were like, oh, we build on success. And it's great if you're already good and you have the confidence, but what if you're not having the success? The old definition of success. Well, Hallie was able to start to look for wins in other places and find those wins and use that to build her confidence. I met Hallie a couple of years ago. Her parents contacted me to start doing some mental coaching with her for all these reasons. She'd gone from a 2A school to Kentucky, and it was a struggle, right? She'd gone from being a big fish in a little pond to a little fish in a big pond. And as you'll hear talk about, she wanted that, but that doesn't mean it's not hard. So I started working with her to help her out, and we used a lot of the tools, techniques that I do with my mental coaching to help her start building that confidence, start using some mindfulness, start using some gratitude and all these things. And you're going to hear her talk about it, these tools that really helped her out her freshman year that she still uses 2 years later. And I dare say, tools she's going to use for the rest of her life. It's a great story about mental health success. Hallie wasn't coming to me with these huge issues, but she was struggling to find herself, to be confident and do a sport that she's really good at, but was struggling with the competition, all the pressures and things like that. So it's a great success story with using mental coaching. And and she's here on the podcast today to talk about it. And so have a listen and enjoy it. Hallie Mitchell of the University of Kentucky Wildcats. No amount of athletic talent or physical ability can overcome a poor mindset. Anxiety, fear, and negativity will always diminish an athlete's abilities and limit their success. If you're not intentionally developing your child's mental toughness, then they are not reaching their full potential. Mental coaching provides the individual drills needed to build the positive mindset necessary for success on the court and in life. Contact today to schedule a free coaching session and start building mental toughness in your athlete. And welcome back to the Mental podcast. I am your host, Coach Thomann again, and I'm here with my guest today, Hallie Mitchell of the Kentucky Wildcats. And
Yeah.
I just want I know, right? That's big time. So tell me a little bit about background here. Just tell us, give me the ins and outs, the Cliff Notes version of all things Hallie Mitchell.
Whew, okay. Well, let's see. I am a junior here at the University of Kentucky. I play softball. Grew up playing softball all my life. Played basketball, volleyball. I'm from Forsyth, Illinois, and really just fell in love with softball since I was 10 years old and played it competitively. And so then I got the opportunity to play here, and it's been awesome. It's been fun. Anything else that you know?
I mean, there's so many follow-up questions I got from that just to let people get to know you a little bit.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't even know where to go to start, Hallie, and how we know each other, Hallie. And because I asked you this before we get, and I liked anytime I have somebody on here who's been a client, I like to make sure and throw it out there that, hey, that you agreed to come on here, have a conversation about the coaching I did with you.
Yeah.
I get you on here because I know you're such a great kid, and I had such great conversations with you with the coaching. But then also it's an idea for me to help spread the idea of coaching and how important mentality is for sports, especially, going in to play college sports, which is a
Yeah.
whole nother level.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's start there. You're a junior. So this is you've played 2 seasons of college softball.
Yes.
But take me back to the first moment stepping on to campus or first day of practice, and you're like, I am not in Forsyth anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that was a huge adjustment for me. I think that was what caught my eye about Kentucky in the first place, was how it was huge and the facilities were amazing and the campus was super big. I thought that was cool. And so when our first practice, and I'm surrounded by girls I'm no longer surrounded by girls who, are, just average players coming together, having a good time. Like, these are the best of the best. And I knew that going into it, but obviously you don't really fully understand it until, you're there. So that was definitely a crazy experience. It was hard for sure at first, and it still is, obviously, but it was crazy. It took major adjusting. Freshman year was rough, but I mean, they say that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, who's they?
Well, I guess people that random people that ask me how college is doing.
Yeah, it's just the assumption. It's the assumption that's going to be hard, but I don't think you understand that when you're going in the first year, right?
No, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same things that drew you to Kentucky are the same things that make it hard. That it's like
Exactly.
everybody wants to go there and play, SEC softball, and hey. And tell us, so you didn't drop, I know, but you haven't mentioned what position you play.
Oh, yeah. I'm a catcher, a little bit outfield too. Last year I played more outfield than I did catching, but kind of goes back and forth.
Goes back and forth. Catch is which one do you love?
Catching is my favorite for sure.
Yeah. What do you got coming up this season? What are you looking forward to?
I'm hoping to be catching this season, because we had a senior that graduated, but battling out with another catcher, so just kind of keep grinding out, trying to come out on top for sure, but that's my hope.
So we talk about the first day being overwhelmed a little bit with everybody there, but you are into your junior year and you're still battling, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's something that's hard for people to understand. It's a constant grind, and even if you win that spot, then next year could be somebody else trying to come in and try to your spot from the behind.
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you get? What's let's say you get back home to Hallie gets home over Thanksgiving and everybody's sitting around asking you how it's doing, what's the question that what's the assumption or the question that people give you that's like just kind of like nails on the chalkboard? Is there one?
Like, you mean like just the basic question that everybody asks, or?
Yeah, or anything like that. Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, I feel like it's always, are you enjoying it? Like, it looks like a lot of fun and everything like that. And I mean, I obviously say, of course it is. And then obviously the question is, so what are you going to do after school? I get that question so many times. And at first, freshman year, I was like, no clue. I always hated that question for some reason, because I was like, I have no clue. I just got here. Like, but I guess when it comes to softball, I mean, they just always, everybody's always asking how it's going, what the team's looking like, what the season's going to look like, just kind of that stuff.
Yeah. I didn't know if there's like an assumption that it's like, I feel like sometimes when you come from a school and you're like, obviously, you're really, really good at your school, especially some of these smaller schools, like a 2A or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like the assumption is, I always feel like a lot of people don't understand the level that you're stepping into, and just, I can't believe she's having to battle for it. Right. Or anything like that.
Yeah. I think at least my family knows that that's no longer an assumption. I don't think they really ever assumed that, because they're my family. And, but I mean, I think people probably know it was going to be a battle for me, coming from such a small town. Obviously I was good in Forsyth, and I still am good, obviously, but like being a star player in the surrounding area, going to an SEC school, like I would say people probably figured it was going to be a challenge, but I don't really tend to think of it that much. I guess what other people think, because I struggled with that as well. I didn't want to let my town or the people back home down with that expectation, and so I kind of had to shove that to the side a little.
Yeah, I know that's something we talked about a little bit early on that freshman year. That was it was a lot on you. Talking about coming in at the beginning, is it more talk about the challenges? Do you feel like they were more physical, mental, both? What do you think?
Definitely mental. A little bit physical. I felt, time management was super hard, so I felt, and waking up super early every single day and then having the practices. I was so tired all the time. But I would say it's mostly mental. Getting past I'm not the best at, I'm not the star player anymore, and I guess there's also a mentality of, you go into it thinking that, right, you want to have that edge. You don't just want to lift your hands up and be like, well, I'm no longer, I still can be, and I had to have that like confidence in it, but like in all reality, I'm competing with these girls, and you see every single day at practice, wow, she's good. Like, that was definitely a challenge. Like, learning the coaching staff was a challenge. They're a bit different than what I've originally have ever been like coached by before. So all of that was a challenge. Of course, just meeting a whole new group of people, that was a challenge.
I liked the way you phrased that, and it had me thinking. You obviously, to do well, you have to have confidence.
Yes.
But when you are in high school, and let's be honest, and you're better than just about everybody else, it's easy to have confidence, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
How do you like, you could go to practice every day at Kentucky in that first year and say, hey, and have this idea that, oh, I'm better than everybody else, but that's not true, right?
Yeah.
So how do you build confidence whenever you had to come up with a new idea of confidence coming in?
Yes, absolutely. And that was hard.
What's the difference? How are you able to stay confident in those situations now the way it is?
I think my confidence in high school came purely from the results that I got, and that kept me going. Like, oh, I'm doing this, this, and this. Like, I'm good, right? I'm have the most triples and home runs, and I'm doing, like, it's pretty evident in like the outcomes I was having that I was like, oh, I'm and I didn't have to think much past it. And I think now those outcomes aren't necessarily the same, actually. Like, it's a huge flip. And so I have to find the little things, the to actually get confidence, and I have to take everything as a win, like just competing for being here, just having the opportunity to be here and at Kentucky, like that's a win. Like I'm good enough to be here. That's a win. Um, I think it's no longer on outcomes, because if I were to just look at that, I would see so much more failure than I did back then, and I could easily take that failure and go down a dark slope. You know what I mean?
It's some of the things that in high school you probably took for granted. Now you absolutely cannot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, it's a great thing that you're able to do that. I mean, it's still outcomes. It's just a little bit more internal outcomes,
Mhm.
and it has to be. It's not a stat sheet necessarily. It's internal outcomes that you have to notice and you have to very much pay attention to.
Yes.
You can't make chicken salad out of chicken feathers, or perhaps you've heard it or even said the other version. Regardless, good coaches should not blame a lack of success on the players they get to coach. It's a lame excuse, and I'm sorry if that ruffles your feathers. But it's your job as a coach to develop your players. If your athletes lack skill or mental toughness, it's your responsibility to develop it. But how do you make today's athlete tougher without risking breaking them? Well, Mental Mettle Coaching now offers professional development for coaches, explaining how to do just that. The program is called Ember to Inferno, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. It teaches real tools and tangible methods that are proven to increase the mental health and toughness of athletes. The program is available as an in-person seminar or as virtual small group coaching. Don't wish for mentally tough athletes. Build them. Contact Mental Mettle Coaching today.
Of course.
Okay. So, what about, let's talk about early on, because I worked with you. You were just coming into Kentucky, and I think when we were talking, you were like, you hadn't even started your season yet. It was just like it was about this time of year a couple years ago, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you hadn't even really, like, I don't want to say you haven't practiced, because you'd practiced, right? But you weren't even in season yet, and it was already a struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that like right now? You were talking about being tired all the time. What's that daily schedule look like?
It's especially in the fall, since our off season, it's a little bit more intense with the weights and the running. So we'll lift Monday, Wednesday, Fridays at 6, and then run on Tuesdays at 6. And then so then you have that, then you have your class schedule. Kind of just depends. My freshman year, it was all in the morning I had stuff, and then right after would have practice. But like now that I'm getting more major specific, I kind of have classes all over, like some afternoon, some morning. So my class schedule kind of messes some things up. But go to class, and then usually right after that is practice. Or sometimes if I have an afternoon class, it's practice right after weights, then class. Sometimes we'll have like a yoga session after our practice. Weekends in the fall are usually free unless we play. But I think for me it was, I don't know, I've like had to wake up that early before, but it was as soon as I'm up that morning, I'm go until my head hits the pillow again.
I mean, just probably get up at 5 a.m., go work out, go straight to practice, then to class, then to practice, then to, yeah.
Yeah. And
It's
even freshman year, I had tutors too. So like I had about 4 or 5 tutors, and so I had some at 9 and 10 at night, and then I mean that was every single week, and so I think that was something that was very draining as well. But I mean I'm glad they did that for us though, because obviously they helped. But the older you get, you don't really have to have tutors if you don't want them, but they like to have freshmen to have them.
Yeah. I'm sure that was probably, even that was new to you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a real shock coming in
Oh yeah.
early on, and what you had to deal with. What do you remember? Let's talk about the coaching a little bit, because that's how I know you. That's what we're. What do you like? What do you remember from those sessions? And let's talk about the short term stuff. Like, what did you notice? What do you remember that? Oh, this was something that really helped me out in the short term that I was able to latch onto and use. Anything at all you can remember?
Yeah. I really liked. I know how we talked about finding the reason why I love the game. First off, I really liked how we do that, and I would consider that obviously a long-term effect for me. But also, I feel like we talked about how to like different tactics to be in the moment and things like that. Just with whatever I'm doing. So just little like tips that, like what am I seeing? Close my eyes, take a deep breath. What's the weather like? Things like that I still do now. That if I'm ever overwhelmed at like a practice or something like that, I can easily do that, and I can refocus and recenter myself on the moment.
A lot about the mindfulness stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, just being in the moment. What was when you get overwhelmed and you didn't have that tactic? What was that? What was that like? What were the issues that you had? If you don't mind getting into it, because I do think this is a really helpful thing
Yeah.
for other young college athletes coming in.
Yeah. So what it would look like was, if I was in a drill or something, or if I was, even freshman year, and I even sometimes struggle with this now, is feeling that anxiousness before practice, like, oh, we're doing this today because I'll get to my practice plan, and I'm nervous because I'm not really that good at that, or I'm nervous because this and that. So even before practice, your brain's going. And so you get there and you're nervous. And obviously when you're like that, it limits your performance, right? You're not going to perform well. And so I couldn't find a way to stop this train of just like, I'm anxious and I'm a little overwhelmed in this moment in this drill, to then I was just performing bad and I couldn't get out of it, and it was just making it worse, because then I'd make a bad throw. Well, crap, I'm not good enough to make this simple throw. And then it affects the next thing and then the next thing, and it was just like, I mean, it could spiral if you let it.
It's that downward spiral of one mistake leads to another, and also a whole lot on the focusing on, once you make a mistake, regretting that mistake and focusing on that mistake just leads to another. And I know this
Yeah.
seems simple, and most people are like, well, yeah, but it's not that easy to just get out of.
Right.
Especially if, and I keep going back to this, if in high school it was easy, I'm just gonna like, oh, I got out this time. No, I'll just step up and hit a triple on the next one because this pitcher's not very good.
Exactly.
Yeah. What about so how is, from a mentality standpoint, from a mindfulness standpoint, how is junior year Hallie right now different than Hallie 2 years ago?
I would say I tried the want and the need to like have to prove myself to people my freshman year. Look, I already made it there. My coach already thought I was good enough to recruit me, and I didn't take that as a fact and just at that. And instead, I still questioned things like, what if I'm this, and this, all these questions. And I think now, whether I do obviously still struggle with things, I don't let it get too deep to the fact where it's like I let it affect the whole reason why I'm here. Like, I'm going to have good days and bad days, but I'm not trying to prove myself to anybody besides myself. And I think once I got that past that aspect, it became a lot easier for me to accept like the failure that I did go through and just kind of brush it off. Be like, yeah, it's okay. I'll get it next time. And yeah, that was hard, but hey, a lot of things are going to be hard. You know what I mean?
It should be, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that you mentioned failure there and your response to failure. And like you still fail a lot, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm guessing whenever you went from, Moral Forsyth to Kentucky, your level of failure increased,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I think that, how do you respond now to failure? Like, do you recognize failure and have a plan to deal with it when you notice it?
Hmm. Um.
I'm really putting you here on the spot, aren't I? Like,
No, it's fine. It gets me thinking. It's all good.
Yeah.
So I guess with failure, really, it's more of I react as a just get better type of thing. Like I think before I would kind of dwell in it, but knowing that this game is full of failure and again, like I knew that before. Like I've played softball my life, but like you said, coming here, it's totally different. Like you just level up to a point where it's like the game is majority failure. And being surrounded by people that also understand that and are also failing, like yeah, it makes it a lot better because you're in it together, right? But I think when I do come across failure, my coaches and my teammates, I think leaning on them instead of just dwelling on it within myself has really helped. And not just keeping it to myself and letting my brain kind of replay it, rethink it, like talking out loud about, man, you know what? I think this is what I did wrong. And then my teammate could be like, yeah, I think so too, but hey, you got it next time. I mean, those are the conversations we have. And next thing you know, I'm not thinking about it anymore because there's no need to.
I think that there's misery loves company a little bit, right? Like you start to you get that out of there rather than and voice that versus just again that downward spiral and yeah. What sort of, if any, what sort of focus does the team there in Kentucky that you have on anything with mentality or mindfulness? Do you guys do anything on that? Just out of curiosity.
Yes. We have just started reading books. Actually, like we were all assigned like different books that kind of focus on our like mental side of the game, and we have quite a bit of like team meetings that we'll get together and we'll talk about these kind of things. I feel like it's prioritized here, but and we talk about the mental side of softball as in like the game beside the game, you know what I mean? But I feel like sometimes it's not as prioritized of the struggles. But I'd say we definitely they're trying to do more of that this year than they have in the past, which has been cool.
Yeah. Any book recommendations for us?
The one I'm reading right now is called Greatness. I don't remember the
Okay.
author, but I can find it.
I think I got it. I think I remember, but I can't. I'm not. I know the book you're talking about, but I'm not pulling it up. But it's anytime that if you're having conversations about that, you're making progress towards those things.
Yes. Yes.
It's no different if you're trying to get better at like blocking balls behind home plate and you practice it, you get better at it. If you're reading a book and practicing mentality, you get better at it, and that's what like it's being intentional about things.
Yes.
Yeah. So give me some, not for me, but give me some advice you have for, female athletes coming into college doing this, because it's, guys, gals are a little bit different in how they do with confidence and things like that. I think that it's not all one way or the other, but I know that there are a lot of female athletes really struggle with the confidence like you're talking about. What sort of advice do you have for young female athletes coming into college?
Whew. I would say, because I feel like all girls kind of are the same in this aspect of caring what other people think. And well, that just not letting that get in the way of something that you have done for all of your life. Like, I always have to tell myself, this is a sport I've been playing for how many years? I think my body knows how to do it. I don't know why I'm caring so much about proving myself to other people. And I think that would be something that I know it's easier said than done, obviously, but that would be advice I would give. And coming in with like a chip on your shoulder, because I didn't think I did that. I went in there just focusing on the grind, like, okay, it's going to be hard, but I can, like, boom, 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 just get through it. Like, I didn't walk on campus thinking, I got this, I'm the best player here. And I have to constantly remind myself to have that mindset. Like, as soon as I step on that field, I have to tell myself I am the best one there. Even if it's not true, that might, like, even saying that every single day will slowly, I think, begin to change the way you do things at your practice, and I think will increase the performance really, because I feel like I've seen a difference in my confidence even if I'm just like constantly saying it to myself.
Yeah, I think, but it doesn't have, it's not a one-time thing, right? Like
Oh no.
it
Yeah.
has to be a constant everyday thing and practice it, because how long are you talking about? Like this idea of, hey, I'm the best and I have to, and I can do this idea, this confidence mentality.
Yeah.
How long you been working on this now?
Oh, since I got to Kentucky, really.
Yeah. And it's a slow process to do that and to be able to believe that a little bit.
Yeah.
How do you, this idea of, well, as you said, a lot of, yeah, and I think you're right. I see this with a lot of the female athletes I work with. A lot of them are people pleasers and care what other people think, right? How do you, like, you have to care a little bit what coaches think, right? How do you find that mix on caring what they think, but then also have to do your own thing a little bit?
I would say, your coach recruited you for a reason. So they obviously like you as a person, hopefully, and obviously like you as a player. So I think continuing to be true to yourself and just by how you are and will please the coaches, because I feel like that relationship should already be there once you are recruited by that person. So I think still being true to yourself will end up making the coaches happy. And obviously being coachable is I think being coachable and then people pleasing are kind of different. And the aspect of you're going to do what your coach tells you to do on the softball field, for sure. But if you're constantly thinking, well, how can I get her to maybe my coach to like me more, or maybe if I do this, she'll see that, maybe I'll start over this person. I think there's different motives behind being coachable and trying to people please.
Like that. I like that idea and how you phrase that. It's being coachable is kind of like taking that information and using it without worrying about what the end result is.
Exactly.
Because that's what we always have we have those ulterior motives, right? Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants to. Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Wow. So anything else, like any tips for those athletes coming on mentality, on anything else that we've picked up from coaching? Like we talked about the short term, but anything long term that you're like, hey, this is something that I want to continue to do that I've picked up on.
I think what I would say is, I know I kind of mentioned this earlier, is whatever sport you're going into, always taking the time to remember. I can get stuck with looking so far ahead, like, got to be better at this, do this, looking so far much in the future, like I want to, eventually be able to do this. But I think taking a second and looking back and saying, this is why I started playing. It's just as simple as this. I love the game. I'm good at the game. Like, remembering this excellence and like the rewards and the things that you did good in the past, because that's something I wasn't very good at. As soon as I got to Kentucky, it was just, okay, here I am, and then I'm going forward, which is good. You wanna look ahead, but I think remembering where you came from, remembering all the good things that you did from the sport, all the relationships that you made from the sport, that is something that I think is very useful for sure for how I keep going.
Sure, that because I do this with every client, I'm sure we did some gratitude work as well.
Mm-hmm.
if you
Yeah.
can remember that, and just how important gratitude is, because gratitude is a little bit about looking in the past and paying attention to what you have to be thankful for, with the whole idea of staying positive and moving forward.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I like that. But everything you're talking about it's still a little bit of mindfulness idea. Like you're not getting too focused too far in the past or in the future, and you're not worried too much about the past, but really talking about that, what you have to be grateful for in the moment and how to move forward just a little bit at a time. I think it's so useful to be able to be centered about what am I doing today? What's good for me today? How can I get better today? Rather than worried about, am I going to get to start next season, which is still several months away, right?
Yeah, that's a very easy thing to get your mind wrapped around, for sure.
Parents of athletes know that confidence and belief are fundamental for success. We want them to play without fear and without anxiety, but once those negative thoughts take over, it can derail years of work. Turning that anxiety into belief is similar to building strength and speed. It just takes intentional effort over time. Mental Mettle coaching provides the individual drills needed to build the positive mindset necessary for success on the court and in life. Contact today to schedule a free coaching session and start building mental toughness in your athlete.
The Mental Mettle Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today.
Talked a couple times about the grind. I think when athletes and coaches throw out the word like grind or trust the process and things like that, I don't think people understand how hard the grind is.
Yeah.
Like, speak to that a minute.
I think not only is the sport the grind, but I mean everything else in between that's going on with school and family, missing home. And I think the expectations too that being here that you have from coaches, from teammates, like that's all a grind. The physical grind that you go through. I mean, the intense weightlifting I've never been through before in my life. I think the first like 4 weeks of college I was so sore. Like I felt like I couldn't move. But I think what is so easy, or what is easier to get through the grind, is just knowing that, wow, I'm really here, I'm really doing it. Like I was dreaming of this moment before, and I'm doing it, and I'm getting better, like I'm getting stronger. But to have that mindset is kind of hard in the midst of it, for sure.
This is something I thought I really wanted. Like, you have to keep that, like,
Yeah.
and you said that early on, that's one of the things that I worked with you all on that really stuck with you, is making sure you remember why you're doing what you're doing and not let everything else get in the way. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I also I have a question. I noticed that you do a lot of stuff with FCA. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Tell me about that. And I see your face light up, and I know you post a lot of. Tell me about that. It's Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and tell me about that chat. Is it a Kentucky chapter?
Yeah. So it's all the athletes at UK, is what FCA is, and I got introduced to that like at the start of my freshman year, and going to team Bible studies, and then getting connected to a local church. But yeah, FCA has been super cool experience, getting to know other athletes. And I've just recently became a leader at the group, so that's been super cool to do, and it's just been a really awesome experience. I think it's made my college experience, softball, everything, it's made it what it is, for sure.
How does it help with you on the field?
I mean, so many different things. I think it's easier to not find my identity in the sport, right? So I know me and my teammates always talk about how our identity is in Christ, not the sport. So this sport will fail us every single day, but it's not going to affect me because I know I'm going to be at the end of the day, at the end of my life. And something like that is so hopeful, that I can't imagine going through a time like this without that kind of a perspective, really. Because I mean, it is hard. The grind is super hard, but I think with the perspective of relying and getting my hope from something that is so much greater than I am is really what keeps me going and makes the failures a little bit easier. Obviously, we always say it's the circumstances don't change, but the perspective does, and so life doesn't get easier. Obviously, the sport doesn't get easier. If anything, honestly, for me, it's gotten harder. I would say the closer I get to God and my relationship, the closer I think Satan tries to knock on the door with certain types of things. And so that's something that I have realized, in my walk, but it's far more rewarding.
But the circumstance really doesn't change, but your perspective does. What has changed? How do you see the entire, like, this whole you playing softball at Kentucky and doing all these things? What has changed about your perspective from when you came in? How do you see things differently now?
I I think I put all my worth really into the sport and to being the girl from the small town that got to go to such a big school. And I think I didn't really realize that until recently, that was kind of what I was doing. But now, I mean, that's just so little to me really now. I'm here playing a sport that I love, that God, gave me the talents to do, and I try to remind myself it's as simple as that. I think I came in with um thinking this was thinking it was so much bigger than it actually is. When in all reality, this is just 4 years of my life that I get to hopefully glorify God on the field and have a blast doing it.
Sometimes the perspective you can't get till you're in it a little bit and get
Yeah.
that and change it, but not everybody does. Like, I think it's good that you're able to do that, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me do me a favor and give me a pitch right here. Like, I told you to give some advice to, like, young athletes coming into college, females and stuff like that, and things they need to do. But do me a favor here, man. I know you've said to people before about this coaching stuff, this mental coaching that I helped you with. Like, help me out. Pitch it here. Is this, how do you feel like this? How do you feel like this is really helpful? And why is it necessary?
Okay, so I would say for me, being able to talk with someone who, one, just isn't in my family, your parents try to talk to you about these kinds of things, and it's just, you try and it's, you end up in an argument or something. But I think having to open up and be vulnerable with someone that, I am just chatting with over the phone and who obviously, like, knows exactly what I'm going through, was something I think that was just made the experience amazing. And I think being vulnerable was something that was hard for me to do, and, like, actually open up and share what I'm feeling, because we did a lot of exercise. I feel like we had to describe how I was feeling in a whole bunch of different moments. And I found that so hard. But now, and obviously then too, I realized why we did it. Being in that moment is something that is super important to be successful in anything. And it's made the enjoyment far greater. And I think when we talked about the why and why I'm here and why I love the sport and just the little things that that are part of my personality that I bring to the sport is something that I never thought of before, but when we talked about it, it was very eye-opening to me. And honestly, like, it really did help me get through my freshman year, 100%. I mean, and there's still some exercises that, like I said, about being in the moment, that if I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed at practice, like just thinking about those things that we did and remembering and all that kind of stuff, I still do that. So
for continuing to do it, because that's the only way it works, is to continue to do
yeah,
those things,
yeah.
right? You're very, very insightful for you about the vulnerability, because I think that way too many people see vulnerability as vulnerability. That means makes me feel weak. And quite honestly, I believe that vulnerability is the path to us be getting stronger, because we learn things about ourselves and what we need to get better at. And you just don't do that if you just don't open
Mhm.
up. And
Yeah.
it's crazy awkward at first though.
Yeah, and I think it's that has taught me a lifelong lesson, because obviously that kind of aspect in all different kinds of relationships is important. If you don't feel like you can talk with someone about something you're going through and you can really open up to them, then that's going to be a hard relationship to have with someone if you feel like you can't do that, or if you're not good at it. I wasn't good at it in high school at all. But I think this was a start of me kind of opening up about how and it eventually led me to talk about these things with my teammates, and they're like, yeah, I went through the same thing. And I'm like, well, we were going through it at the same time, and yet we didn't even talk about it with each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if I just would have
Oh,
said,
I think everybody thinks they're the only one going through it, and
yeah,
it's not the case. It's never the
yeah,
case, right?
right.
But which I think that's so useful for why so many, like you talked about, you guys are starting to do a little bit more of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding that more and more programs and colleges, universities are starting to do more of that, because it's so useful when you realize, if you get a little bit vulnerable and you realize, oh, I'm not the only one going through this, which is
Yeah,
extremely useful. Oh,
absolutely.
that's so great. So great. See, great job. That's a really good pitch. That's really good. You really,
Thank
like,
you.
I'm proud of you. That's fantastic.
Well, thank
Okay.
you, really.
No, hey, Hallie, let's say last question I always ask.
Okay.
What did I not ask that I should have? What should we have talked about that I didn't bring up?
Shoot. That's a good question. I feel like
Yeah,
I've talked about a lot
I
of
like
things.
it. Well, hey, we did. We know it's a phenomenal job, but I just want to make sure we don't miss anything, right?
Yeah. I mean, I could really talk about softball. I could talk about Jesus all the time. So really, I could always keep going. But
Yeah.
because it's
What
obviously
kind of
they're both part of my life, a huge part of my
what,
life. So
what kind of softball player would Jesus be? That's a great question.
kind of softball player would Jesus be? I feel like I'm kind of picturing him as this little like scrawny third baseman, but that's like crazy strong. You
Gotcha.
know what I mean? That's like got a wicked arm that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
I don't know. I don't know what position he would be, but like definitely a super humble guy, obviously.
Yeah.
But the best one out there. But
Okay. Well, sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah. I
Yeah.
get
Yeah. No, that was kind of a coaching question there that we would like. I love having conversations like that. Just get our brain thinking.
yeah, that
All
was good.
right. All right, Hallie. Hey, I will be paying attention this year. I always keep tabs on how you're doing. Go Cats.
Yes, go Cats. Thank you so much for
All
having me.
right. Oh my gosh. Thank you for coming on. I love it. I love the idea of having clients come on and share this message of how it's okay to be vulnerable, do this coaching, and how it can be
Mhm.
so beneficial for you. We're talking about this was 2 years ago, and
Yeah,
you're using tools that we used 2 years ago that help you through your daily routine, which is fantastic. So
absolutely. Yes. Thank you.
awesome. Awesome. All right, Hallie, we'll catch up again soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks again.
Parents of athletes know that confidence and belief are fundamental for success. We want them to play without fear and without anxiety, but once those negative thoughts take over, it can derail years of work. Turning that anxiety into belief is similar to building strength and speed. It just takes intentional effort over time. Mental Mettle coaching provides the individual drills needed to build the positive mindset necessary for success on the court and in life. Contact today to schedule a free coaching session and start building mental toughness in your athlete. You can't make chicken salad out of chicken feathers, or perhaps you've heard it or even said the other version. Regardless, good coaches should not blame a lack of success on the players they get to coach. It's a lame excuse, and I'm sorry if that ruffles your feathers. But it's your job as a coach to develop your players. If your athletes lack skill or mental toughness, it's your responsibility to develop it. But how do you make today's athlete tougher without risking breaking them? Well, Mental Mettle Coaching now offers professional development for coaches, explaining how to do just that. The program is called Ember to Inferno, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. It teaches real tools and tangible methods that are proven to increase the mental health and toughness of athletes. The program is available as an in-person seminar or as virtual small group coaching. Don't wish for mentally tough athletes. Build them. Contact Mental Mettle Coaching today. Let me preface my next breakdown with a statement, just so you know where I'm coming from and where I'm not coming from. I am in no way, shape, or form claiming to be the entire reason that Hallie Mitchell is mentally tough and mentally strong and successful. No way. But I do believe that I played a part in it. And when I say I played a part in it, it means I used the coaching technique to help her become more mentally tough and more mentally strong. Obviously, she came in with a whole lot of ability, a lot of strength, great upbringing, and a lot of things to build on. But the coaching helped her recognize these things and gave her tools to draw on this thing she found out about herself to become better. And that's fantastic for me, because that's my goal when I work with athletes, is help them recognize what they are and help them get to where they want to be. And a lot of times athletes know they're not getting it done. They're not thinking or acting in a certain way, and it's getting in the way of what they want to achieve. And I step in to help them do that. And I think that's the result with Hallie. And I'm so thrilled she came on the podcast. And whenever I talk about being mentally tough, I always say that it's a hard thing to define. Really, there's a lot of different words that we use for it, with resiliency and persistence, and some cool words like chutzpah and moxie and things like that. We use these words, but do we really know what it is? Like, how do you define mental toughness? And it's always one of these things that you know it when you see it, or you know it when you don't see it. But I think there's a few things I picked up from this interview with Hallie that are really good examples of traits that I want athletes to have after working with me and doing some of this mental coaching. I want to run through a couple of those. First of all, she's the first thing she said about being mindful. Mindfulness is being a state of being that's very focused on the present, and being able to focus on what you need to do at the present, and not being too worried about any past mistakes or anything you think you need to do in the beginning. And when she mentioned that time management was a big issue for her when she first went into Kentucky, even before season started, getting up at, she had workouts at 6, then to classes, then to practice, then tutors, and then getting right, back into bed and doing it all over again. And when we do that, and she talked about the thing I thought was interesting. She talked about, and not just the classes and worried about your grades and things like that, which the tutors are there to help with, but she would get practice plans ahead of time and know what they were going to work on that day, and then have anxiety build up because she knew they were about to work on something that she wasn't all that good at. And what mindfulness does is when we practice mindfulness, and it is a practice, it's something you have to work on. When we practice mindfulness, it allows us not to focus on things that are too far in the future and too far in the past. It helps us focus on what we need to do. Now, you have to look at the future a little bit for goal setting, things like that. Absolutely. But when we spend too much time worrying about that, I've noticed that a lot of athletes, kids are smart, kids, the more, they start to notice about what could go wrong, and they start thinking about what could go wrong. And there's an old saying that worry is misuse of an imagination. And that's what we get into when we're not practicing mindfulness. That worry keeps us from doing what we need to do at the moment. Instead, it helps us have anxiety over what might happen and what could go wrong. And I think that mindfulness and practicing mindfulness daily is just it's good for athletes because it helps them in the moment in games in being able to do what they need to do in that moment. And that's not easy to do sometimes. So mindfulness is definitely a trait, a characteristic of mental toughness that Hallie showed. Another one is confidence. And this is confident. Confidence is an easy one to say. But I mentioned this throughout the interview and at the beginning, that confidence it's easy when you're winning. It's easy when you have stats to back it up. It's easy. We always say confidence has to be drawn from something. You have to be like, I know I can do this, so I have confidence that I can do this. And that's true. But whenever you go from, in her case, you don't have to be going from a 2A school to SEC to have this problem. I mean, this is an extreme example of her really stepping up a level. But this happens, I notice, with kids that go from 8th grade into high school, or they go from JV to varsity, or they go from senior year to a Division III. The level gets harder, and the amount of failure you experience goes up, and the amount of successes can go down, unless you learn to find success and wins in different ways. And that's what Hallie said she was able to do. Be able to say and remember that, I learned this skill and that's a win. Or I'm here at Kentucky going to practice every day and my coach is working with me. I've got an SEC softball coach working with me every day because she thinks I'm worth it and that I can improve and do this. And that's a win, right? So being able to do that and acknowledging that. So she's, not just noticing things, but she's actually acknowledging these things as wins, and just be able to do that regardless of the failure that she has to be facing some, because softball, baseball, they call them games of failure. And it's true. Like the best hitters in the world, get out it's a 70-30 clip, right? 70% of the time you're out, 30% you actually get hit, right? And that's the whole thing about Major League Baseball, that, if you hit much over 300, they call you a Hall of Famer. And it's real. It's hard. It's something you have to be able to find wins in different ways. And Hallie's able to do that. A third thing that I noticed about the mental toughness is her knowing her identity and knowing what she is. And that isn't just a softball player. Now, part of her identity is a softball player, but she said it's a smaller part of it now. But she knows what she likes. She knows she likes softball. She knows why she does softball, and she lets that be part of her identity. But before, she knew her identity and her reason for doing softball was not necessarily for herself, but she was doing things for others, right? She didn't want to let people down. And that caused a lot of pressure for her. She also talked about being coachable. That's part of her identity, and knowing she needed to be coachable, but she knew that sometimes she has a problem with being a people pleaser. And it was an extremely mature answer from her that I actually wrote down because I want to think about that and how to deliver that, which is why I love this podcast so much. I'm getting information from people that I want to use, but how to be coachable without being too caught up in the end result of it being, I get to play more or I get to do more for the team. Be coachable for what it is to get better. Coach says, I need to get better at this, so I'm going to get better at it, and not be too worried about the ulterior motive and what I get out of it. Not so, and that helps her keep away from being a people pleaser and just wanting to. That's part of her identity now. And the other part of her identity that she really, really leaned into that I thought is just great is she says she understands her identity in Christ. And that means so much more to her than being identity as a softball player. And I think at some point, we all have to stop playing a game that we love. Sometimes it stops abruptly. Sometimes we're told that. That's most people. Most people get told, yeah, you're not good enough to keep playing. And most of us want to keep playing somehow. And if you don't have an identity beyond your sport, it can be very, very difficult when that ends or starts to end, or even during, because it can make you that people pleaser and you're not doing as good a job as you want to. And the fact that she has found that her identity in Christ through the FCA is, it makes her so much stronger and so more mentally tough. And it's kudos to her for doing that. And I'm so thrilled to be able to see her grow through that and become a better softball player, better human, better Christian. And it's great. And so those three things that we developed that are really good, that I helped her develop through these tools, because I have tools for all of these things to help do those things: the mindfulness, the confidence, the identity, and knowing that those, if you notice, those all came from her being vulnerable. She talked about opening up and how that helped her grow and gain all of those traits that I mentioned there that are so useful for being a good athlete, being a good person. And what those traits you get that we call mental toughness all come from being vulnerable. And that can seem counterintuitive, but it's the truth. Vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It's part of the path to strength. Let me say that again. All right. For everybody in the back, not paying attention, turn up your volume. Vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It's part of the path to success and strength. And this isn't just for softball players. This is for coaches listening, parents listening. Asking for help is more of a sign of strength than it is a sign of weakness. It takes so much more strength to ask for help than it does to just assume you can do it on your own. And the end result is you get even stronger, and you realize that, and Hallie talked about this, it wasn't even just talking to me. She started opening up to other people. And there's no doubt that it helped the entire team. She helped other people on her team by opening up. That's a great teammate and making such a great culture in your team where the kids can talk to each other, open up a little bit, share their experiences, share their feelings, share their fears, and do that. And it's all from starting to be vulnerable. So there's a lot in here in this podcast this week for all types of people. But I think the one thing that I want everybody to know: be vulnerable, be okay with it. Find people to be vulnerable with, if that's a coach, other people in the same situation. But be vulnerable. It's going to help you learn things about yourself and learn how you can grow. So yeah, it's good stuff. I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann. This has been the Mental Mettle Podcast. And remember to believe.
Thanks again for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mental Mettle Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Mettle Podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Mettle Podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your mettle.